Hello, I'm Yflyer, and I'd like to talk to you about something. One of my favorite Thanksgiving movies, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
You can talk about the pit, barbecue. The band was jumping, the people too. Mess around. They're doing the mess around. They're doing the mess around. Everybody doing the mess around.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy, what?
You're fucked.
This film is directed by John Hughes. Now, this is a acclaimed director right here. He did Ferris Bueller. He did The Breakfast Club. He did 16 Candles. He's the writer for Home Alone. This guy, this was a working man in the 80s making films. But here's what I will say about John Hughes films. They can be really creepy at times, and it really, really sucks. What do I mean by this? I want you to go watch The Breakfast Club, and I want you to pay close attention to the Bender character, all right? Now, he says many egregious things, harasses Molly Ringwald's character. The worst of it all is when he suggests that him and the jock in the room go to sexually assault her, which is horrifying as a line and played as a joke. I'm telling you, these movies have horrible stains on them of just, I don't even know how some of this stuff is like in there, especially because John Hughes was directing and writing this film, a lot of these films. Oh, dude. Now, there are other aspects about John Hughes that kind of suck, and I'm going to address them because it is important. Number one, his constant casting of Molly Ringwald and using her as a, quote, muse is, I can't even begin to describe how creepy that sounds, especially because of her age and how she would be treated. Oh boy, yeah, this movie has problems with it. However, it still has that John Hughes magic, and with this creepy stain on him. What do I mean by that? John Hughes has created the iconic feel that you probably know in 80s movies, where that soft, like kind of techno, Isley Brothers, maybe in their late 90s kind of era, making kind of music like do 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 da do do do, and then you got like the super like high contrast filter on the camera, and the girl's like got stars in her eyes. She's like, I don't want you to go to Farawayville, and the boy's like, I have to, babe. It's what's best for everyone. That's John Hughes. He really created that kind of feeling, I feel like, in the 80s. The king of that. He's the king of that. Now, this film was made in released in 1987. And the last film I reviewed, When Harry Met Sally, or wrote a love letter to, was released in 1989 at the very tail end of the 80s. Now, that movie is shot like an 80s movie, but it does not feel like an 80s movie. It does actually, quite interestingly, feel like a movie from the 90s. Now, this movie is interesting because it feels like we are holding on to the nostalgia of the filmmaking from the 80s. I can't wait to talk about it. Let's get into it. I'm not going to go super in depth with this movie. We're going to jump around a lot because I encourage you to go watch it for yourself if you feel like you have the time for such a movie like this. But yeah, I'm going to talk about some good bits, some bad bits, and some in between. This movie makes me feel a lot of different things at once, and I love it and I hate it. Let's talk about it. Now, this opening scene introducing Steve Martin's character, Neil Page, is very good, and I love the way that it's shot. I love the comedy in the scene, and I love the introduction of our straight man in the comedy. What is a straight man? And no, I'm not talking about his sexuality. A straight man in comedy is someone who is supposed to play off the funny man in a duo and possibly trio or quadruple. I don't know. Neil Page as the straight man in this comedy is really great, contrasted to John Candy's character, Del Griffith. John Candy's character, I'm gonna get it out of the way, is large. But what's great about him is that they don't make jokes necessarily about him being large or big. And this is especially important in a movie about travel and mishaps during travel. This is really interesting. Maybe I'm not looking into it enough, and maybe they are making light of his either weight or size, but I think it's done pretty well, honestly. Del Griffith is funny in the way that SpongeBob is funny, where he's very aloof, he is very charismatic, he is very likable, in my opinion, and if you don't find SpongeBob likable, then that says something more about you than about SpongeBob. Now, all sorts of funny coincidences happen throughout this movie. They end up on the same flight together. Del Griffith earlier manages to steal Neil's cab. Really great comical scenes of characters being goofy. I really enjoy it. I genuinely do. I love the body humor. I love the one-liners. And I'm fucking disgusting. Another really great part about this movie is what the fuck was I going to talk about? The editing, that's what it is. Another great part about this movie is almost the absurdist comedy with its editing and the way that they utilize it. And what I mean by that is that many fantastical things happen in this movie, very a la Looney Tunes, and man, it's slapstick. And I love it so much. I think if I can compliment this movie on anything, and we'll really talk about it during a certain scene, it's editing. This movie is paced really, really well, and it's shorter than When Harry Met Sally. This movie is really, really short, and it's got a lot of great moments and some not. And I'm very impressed. I'm extremely, extremely impressed. Now, like I said, this movie is about travel, and it is about Neil Page and also Del Griffith trying to get home for Thanksgiving. I love this plot. It's very simple, and it allows for a lot of good joke writing about a somewhat mundane task that I feel like many of us usually get through without a hitch, but there are those times in our lives where traveling is one of the most miserable parts of either a vacation or you're going to a new place, what have you. It can just be the worst thing in the world, and every unlucky thing happens to you at once. I'm sure we've all been there, and I love that this movie captures that in the most gross, funny, just comical way. It's so great. Another great part about this movie and the time that it was made in, it is the old technology that we see all the time. We get a almost museum of it is wonderful. I love seeing almost this time capsule of just inconveniences, and like, for example, that credit card press really early on where they like mash the thing down and then it puts your numbers on the piece of paper. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine how many mistakes and errors that could have been made. It's so funny. So funny. Now, throughout this movie, Neil is extremely mean to Del in a comical way. He's very grumpy, and Del is very aloof. He don't care. He's just a happy, swell guy. And Del is constantly aiding Neil throughout this movie. He's a very generous, very helpful person with his connections through his shower ring curtain selling business. His profession in life is that he sells like the rings that hold your curtains at a shower. Yeah, and he flips out this little like display wallet book of like all these ones. It's so, I love this character so much. What an excellent, well-written character, where Neil is bland and just your average white guy. Oh my gosh, Del Griffith is just the world, man. He is larger than life. And no, I'm not. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I did not mean that the way that you would think. All right, let's talk about some good bits once they're in this hotel room. Now, first, we're going to talk about one that I'm going to introduce as a running trend throughout this movie. And I'm going to want you, the big person that you are, to make your own opinions on these. And I'll display my own. The first problem they encounter when they get into the hotel room is that there is only one bed. And it's not big. And I love the constant cut between them and looking at the bed, and it goes like, oh man. Okay. I like this joke. Not love it. I like this joke. And we are going to get a lot of no homo bro jokes throughout this film. Some of them are kind of oh man, it's so weird. It is so weird how like well they do, but also they don't do well. I'll get into it. It's very interesting. What I like about a lot of these no homo bro jokes is that it's not like they're saying, well, I don't want to sleep with another man, do you? No, I don't. No. It's more they try to dance around the subject because they are going to end up sleeping in that bed together, because Neil wants to sleep, Del wants to sleep, and Neil is for sure not sleeping on that nasty, nasty carpet. Oh, I can't even imagine how long that thing has been cleaned properly. Now, I love this next bit when Neil is trying to sleep and Del is kind of a tossy-turny kind of person in bed. When they're trying to go to bed, they need to kind of rustle to relax. And he takes out a book. and he tries to read it, but he's like, oh no, it's too dark, without any words. And he takes out a lighter and he starts trying to read by the lighter's light, because the reason why this scene is so funny to me is because they quickly cut after he lights the lighter. But if you think about it, he's gonna be reading there for a minute, right? You already heard how loud the pages were turning, because there's no AC in that room, so it's dead quiet. And if he wants to turn a page, he's gonna have to like flick that lighter again to turn it on and then see it. And then if it gets too hot, as lighters do if you hold them for an extended period of time, he's gonna have to wait. Man, just thinking about it it's funny to me. I don't know what it is. It's just it's funny. Now, Neil crashes out at Del. He freaks out. He loses his mind. And he yells at Del for talking too much, for almost being too happy. And Neil's frustration is misplaced. Yes, he's been through quite a bit to get to this point. And now he's really facing his frustrations. However, he has no right to take it out on Del. It's not fair. It's not fair. And Del has been very, very helpful to him up until this point. Unfortunately, Del just isn't the best person to share a room with. Now, what Neil is yelling about, it's very concise and it goes on for a hot minute. And I am a big proprietor, using that word again wrong, of that movies and films are a good reflection of a director or writer, whoever. However, I don't think that John Hughes shares the mentality that Neil Page does. I actually think he's making fun of him in an interesting way by letting him go on for so long. It is with Del Griffith's reaction, the music, and what he says. His whole monologue about "I like being me," which you've probably heard over a TikTok or something. That's from this movie. It's really almost, it's powerful in a way. It weirdly though, it probably didn't open a lot of people's eyes to maybe the fact that they were acting that way and they are just being upset with other people enjoying their lives just because they're grumpy. I know I'm reading real deep into it, but you know what? I feel like that's what we should do. It's important. We should analyze our art. It's very important. They get robbed, which is so hilarious. and then they have to get a very inconvenient ride from this redneck character. And I love the reveal of this guy. It is so built up, and he is just disgusting. Like every time he spits that dip out of his mouth, oh my God, I wanted to vomit. Like, man. Now, funny enough though, Neil and Del actually make it to the train station where Neil has a good chance of getting home to his wife. So, and what's so interesting about it, all right, they're just kind of like, all right, see ya. They're very nice to each other. I like that a lot. Neil actually feels bad for how he acted to Del. He realizes he's in the wrong. He realizes he was being a jerk. That's great. That is great. And they kind of part ways at this moment until, of course, the train breaks down. Now, this scene is also great because Neil has to decide to go with Del again, because Del does not call over Neil. He's like, come on, buddy. Nope. He takes one look at Neil and he starts walking his own separate way. Ooh, that's powerful. That's really, really powerful. Now, while they're riding the bus to their next destination, Neil tries to lead everyone in a song on the bus, but he sings a song that no one recognizes. And they all kind of rudely are like, they just ignore him. They're like, what? But then Del sings the Flintstones theme, and everybody there knows the Flintstones theme, and they all sing along. This is an interesting moment. It's a small character moment, but it shows how likable Del is compared to Neil, and just a very small way of what they are interested in and what they know in pop culture. That is interesting. That is interesting. Okay, so we're at, I think, an airport, I believe. Del is going around selling shower curtain ring hangers, whatever. Shower curtain rings. So I'm flustered because this scene really sucks. I'm going to get into why. It's really good until this last bit, and I hate it. I'm going to talk about it. I gotta talk about it. So Del is selling these shower curtain rings, and we find out he's lying about them. Comically lying about what they are. Oh, it's a Chinese ancient artifact. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's this. Like, that is because we've seen Del to be a very honest, very transparent person up until now, because he's just like comically himself. But him lying about what the shower curtain rings are, it's a very interesting moment. It's funny, but when you start to look at it, it's weird for his character. And then, where the last customers he's selling to, and the camera cuts to them first, it is a group of young girls. Okay? Now, Del is selling the shower curtain rings to them, and I'm going to read you his line. He says to sell them to these young girls, I'm going to get into that, it makes you look a little older too. You could pass for 18, 19, so here's why I'm frustrated with this line. The fact that he says you could look a little bit older and follows it with the ages 18 and 19. 18 is the age of consent in most countries. And if he's saying that so that they can look older, that implies that they are under 18. Now, why, Del? Why would they want to look older? Why? Why would you market that? Why would a young girl want to look older? That's creepy. That's weird, isn't it? Why would you want to do that, John Hughes? Yes, I'm talking to you because you directed, produced, and wrote this film. So why does he say this? And why do the girls all hand them their money in unison? Why? Well, we already talked about how John Hughes kind of seems creepy. He used Molly Ringwald as a muse, quote unquote. I hate that word for a young teenage girl. And also, I'm sure you've probably heard this, the guy who plays the principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off was then convicted and arrested of just like a ton of child pornography, just myriads of it. Oh, Bro, why was this guy on set? Why are you associating with him then? He's also worked with Tim Burton, another director who doesn't use any kind of people of color in his movies or queer representation or really any of that. Yeah, it's weird. It's real weird. I hate this line. I hate the kind of stain that it leaves on this legacy, and it sucks. Man, I almost shut this movie off when I was watching it. I swear. I was really frustrated. I was really mad. Really mad. All right, let's go back to having fun, which I hate to say that let's go back to having fun after that horrible scene, but let's do it. So, this scene of Neil walking in the snow to get to his car is really funny. Because he just falls and he ruins his whole outfit. And I've walked in the snow like that down a hill. And that happens where you just like, and you like lose all control and you're a mess. It is so, I love it. I love it. I also like how Neil is never, ever rewarded for his behavior. He is never, ever rewarded for swearing at people or getting angry. He is constantly put down by life. That is beautiful. I love it. And after all the mishaps of not being able to get a rental car, getting all dirtied in the snow, all of that, Del comes to save him once again. Now, this scene where Del and Neil are driving to their next destination, I would say that out of all the jokes in this movie, this is the best setup of everything in this movie. So, as Del is taking his turn to drive and the seat is broken and Neil is asleep, we get a great scene of him driving to Mess Around by Ray Charles, great song. And then his jacket gets stuck on the chair as he's trying to take it off. And he's constantly swerving around and going crazy. And then finally he swerves way too far and then he has to use an exit to get off a highway. Now, if you've driven, if you haven't driven, let me explain this to you. So, highways generally are going one way and the other's coming the other way, right? So you're going this way. Okay. So he takes an exit. That's usually to get to wherever you need to go. All right. So he's at the exit and he's pulled over. So now Neil wakes up all casual. He's like, "Oh, what happened?" And Del is like, "Oh, we must have hit a deer. I almost hit a deer or something." Neil goes back to sleep and Del turns around the opposite way and goes the opposite way of the exit. You can already see where this is going, and I love this. Okay, so they're driving down the road, and then people going the right way of their lane are like, "Oh my God, that guy's going the wrong way," and they start trying to tell them to turn around. Del doesn't believe them, calls them drunk. Neil doesn't either. And the whole time that this is happening, once they go down that wrong way, we get this amazing shot of these two semis driving perfectly parallel to each other coming down the road. So the couple's like, "Turn around, you're gonna get someone killed." And they still don't believe them until finally they come up on the semis, and then Neil sees them, and his reaction is so wonderful. And then once they crash into the semis, the best moment of this whole movie happens. This scene, I can't even express to you how funny I find it. I really can't. Just thinking about it is making me giggle right now, all right? Like, this scene, to me, is just so funny and such a great setup. And before all of that, Del threw his cigarette lit into the back seat. So not only now was the car extremely damaged, it then catches fire. Just like, what a way to end the scene. What a way to end the scene. But we're not done yet. No, they're gonna drive that thing. And they drive it to a hotel. Now we get a very 80s John Hughes scene of Neil inviting Del into his hotel room, which interestingly enough has 2 beds this time. So they can enjoy each other's company in somewhat peace. And we get a nice scene of them eating junk food and drinking together, getting pretty drunk. And it's nice to see them be friends and bond. And we find out how much they love their wives. And Del says something really special here. He says, "Love is not a big enough word to describe how I feel about her." Woo! Gotta use that one. I gotta use that one. So some hijinks do happen until they get to this last train ride together, and it's pretty funny. But what's interesting about this scene is that when they part ways here, and Neil is quite literally getting on the last train to get home. JoJo's Part 3, sorry. You would think that there's a joke going to be set up here with how long they're talking and how the train gets arrived there and someone already gets on. I thought that the train was going to leave without Neil. It's going to be another scene. Nope, they part ways and it's pretty sweet. And then similar to When Harry Met Sally, Neil has a montage in his head of everything that happened before with him and Del. However, it's about what Del said about being home and being with his wife. And he remembers some odd comments about Del being like, oh, I haven't been home in a long time. Saying things like, I loved my wife. It is revealed that once Neil goes running back to Del's wife has been dead for a very long time, and he doesn't have a home to go to. And so in their last journey together, they walk to Neil's house for Thanksgiving, and they share a meal with each other. Whew, it's a pretty tender ending. It's really sweet. Very John Hughes, very sweet, very nice, really great ending. You don't see that a lot, I feel like, nowadays. Just a very wholesome, sweet. It's a little out of nowhere with Del's wife just being like, oh, she's dead. It feels a little emotionally manipulative. But that's what movies are sometimes. They're emotionally manipulative. And it's really sweet. It's really cute. And I really like after this kind of almost buddy comedy, we get this really touching scene of them together. And it's not like Neil's like, you know what, I hate you, but you're the biggest lovable guy. Like none of that dumb bullshit. No, they are friends. It's really nice. It's a really, really good ending. Like, so good. So good. I love it. Anyways, I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's probably not going to be very long, but I just wanted to make a quick video about this movie. I highly encourage you go watch it for yourself because I probably left out a lot of good bits from it. But yeah, I really, really enjoy this film. I highly recommend it. It's got some glaring problems, but it's very interesting for a Thanksgiving movie and a movie about travel, a comedy about travel. I love that. That to me, that's just that was just begging to be written. So I hope you enjoyed. And as always, thank you for watching. And I hope to see you again soon.